By the summer of 1942, the world seemed to be holding its breath. Across Europe, German armies still stood tall, their banners flying over conquered cities, their victories echoing through radio broadcasts and newspaper headlines. In the deserts of North Africa, clouds of dust followed armored columns as they surged eastward, pushing the British closer to the edge of collapse. To many observers, it looked as though the Axis war machine had finally reached unstoppable momentum. And yet, behind the scenes, a very different story was beginning to unfold. In Washington, maps covered entire walls, layered with pins, colored strings, and handwritten notes. Officers leaned in close, debating routes, supply lines, and landing zones. Across the Atlantic, in London, similar rooms hummed with tension as British commanders wrestled with hard truths. Their nation had endured years of bombing, rationing, and loss. They knew the Germans too well. They understood the price of impatience. And now, with American forces newly arrived on the world stage, an uneasy partnership was trying to decide how and where to strike. The Americans were eager. Fresh troops, fresh factories, and fresh confidence fueled their belief that a bold, direct assault against occupied Europe could bring a swift end to the war. Many believed that landing in France as soon as possible was the only logical course. But the British were haunted by memories of past disasters and sobered by their weakened state. To them, a premature invasion of France risked catastrophe. They argued that the Allies needed experience, preparation, and above all, control of vital supply routes. Nowhere was that more critical than the Mediterranean. As these debates raged, President Franklin D. Roosevelt weighed the voices around him. He listened to his generals, to his advisers, and to Winston Churchill himself. But he also listened to the mood of the American people, who demanded action, and to his own instinct, which told him that delay would only strengthen the enemy. He believed the Allies needed a victory, something bold, something dramatic, to announce to the world that the United States had fully entered the fight against Nazi Germany. Slowly, a plan took shape. Rather than storming the beaches of France, the Allies would strike at North Africa. It would be the first major American offensive against German forces, a test of untried troops against seasoned veterans. The target was a vast coastline stretching from Morocco to Algeria, controlled not directly by Germany, but by Vichy France, a regime that answered to Berlin. The hope was that French resistance would be minimal, allowing Allied forces to gain a foothold, open the Mediterranean, and begin squeezing Axis armies from both east and west. The operation required breathtaking logistics. Hundreds of ships gathered in distant ports, loaded with men, tanks, trucks, ammunition, and fuel. Thousands of soldiers trained relentlessly, rehearsing landings, studying unfamiliar terrain, and bracing themselves for combat. Many had never been outside the United States. Soon, they would be stepping onto hostile shores under fire. In November, massive convoys slipped quietly into the Atlantic. Their destination remained secret, even to many aboard the ships. As they crossed the ocean, storms battered the vessels, and seasickness spread through cramped compartments. Yet morale remained high. These young soldiers knew they were part of something historic, even if they could not yet grasp the scale of what lay ahead. Meanwhile, Axis intelligence picked up scattered hints of unusual activity near Gibraltar. Reports of heavy shipping traffic reached German and Italian headquarters, but no clear conclusions were drawn. With their attention fixed on the titanic struggle in Russia and the desert battles in Egypt, Axis leaders dismissed the warnings as routine. It was a fatal miscalculation. Before dawn on November 8, 1942, Allied ships loomed out of the darkness along the coasts of Morocco and Algeria. In the eerie stillness before sunrise, landing craft splashed into the cold water, engines coughing as they surged toward unfamiliar beaches. Soldiers clutched rifles, their hearts pounding. Some whispered prayers. Others stared silently into the black horizon, waiting for the first burst of gunfire. Chaos erupted almost instantly. High waves slammed into the small boats, tossing men and equipment into the sea. Vehicles broke loose, colliding in the surf. Officers shouted orders that vanished into the roar of the wind and water. In some places, French coastal batteries opened fire, shells bursting among the crowded landing zones. The carefully planned assault dissolved into confusion, and survival became the first priority. Yet amid the disorder, acts of courage unfolded everywhere. Soldiers dragged wounded comrades from the waves. Engineers blasted through obstacles under fire. Small groups pressed inland, seizing airfields and crossroads before defenders could organize. By sheer determination, the Allied forces clawed their way ashore. In the cities of Algiers, Oran, and Casablanca, fighting flared through streets and harbors. French troops, uncertain of their loyalties and orders, resisted fiercely in some areas and surrendered quickly in others. The situation teetered on a knife's edge. A prolonged battle against French defenders would have bled the Allies white and handed precious time to the Germans. Then, in a twist of fate, a senior French official happened to be in Algiers, tending to a gravely ill relative. Confronted with the reality of overwhelming Allied strength and the futility of resistance, he chose negotiation over destruction. After tense discussions, a ceasefire was declared. One by one, French units stood down, opening their ports and airfields to the invaders. The impact was immediate. Allied supply ships streamed into newly captured harbors. Aircraft filled the skies. Troops poured inland, consolidating their hold on North Africa. For the first time, American forces stood face to face with German units, not as distant allies of Britain, but as principal combatants. Hitler's response was swift and furious. Refusing to concede the region, he ordered elite divisions rushed into Tunisia, hoping to form a defensive shield that would block the Allied advance. Air transports flew day and night, ferrying men and equipment across the Mediterranean. For a moment, it seemed the gamble might pay off. The desert battles that followed were brutal. At narrow mountain passes and across open plains, American troops faced the terrifying efficiency of German armored tactics. In one fierce clash, inexperienced U.S. units were caught off guard, their lines collapsing under concentrated attacks. The defeat was sobering. It exposed weaknesses in leadership, coordination, and battlefield communication. But it also sparked rapid change. Commanders reorganized. Training intensified. New tactics were adopted. Hard lessons were absorbed in blood and fire. Within weeks, American units began to show remarkable improvement, pushing back with growing confidence and skill. Above them, Allied aircraft gradually seized control of the skies. Bombers pounded Axis airfields and supply convoys, choking the flow of reinforcements. Submarines and warships hunted down transport vessels, turning the Mediterranean into a deadly gauntlet. German and Italian troops in Tunisia soon found themselves isolated, short of food, fuel, and ammunition. As winter faded into spring, the pressure became unbearable. Surrounded and starved, Axis positions crumbled. One by one, defensive lines collapsed. Entire divisions laid down their arms. By May 1943, more than 250,000 German and Italian soldiers marched into captivity. It was a defeat on a scale rivaling the disaster at Stalingrad. The victory transformed the war. North Africa was secured. The Mediterranean was reopened. Allied forces stood poised to strike southern Europe itself. But perhaps more importantly, the campaign forged a new army. The United States had paid for experience in blood, and emerged far stronger for it. For the men who had waded through the surf, fought through desert storms, and endured the terror of their first battles, the lessons of North Africa would shape every campaign that followed. They would carry that hard-won knowledge to the beaches of Italy, the hedgerows of Normandy, and the heart of Germany itself. What began as a risky gamble became the proving ground of an army and the turning point of a global conflict. In those sun-scorched deserts and storm-lashed beaches, the Allies discovered not only how to fight together, but how to win.